Okay, folks, welcome to Teams Day Online, our User Adoption Summit. Today we have an excellent lineup of speakers, and this is our first summit, so we are actually going to do some things that are a little unique with this, and hopefully everything works out today. But we're actually going to we have our Teams meeting, which you're all in now, and everybody's on mute at this point. So when we get to the question and answer section, if you have any questions, please take the time, to take yourself off of mute and, ask your question at that point in time. You can also use the chat. We'll be following the chat. So if you want to fill in any questions or anything into the chat, that's great. Also, this session is actually going out live to both, to LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. So there's a lot of different moving components to this. But anyway, today our focus is user adoption. And our first speaker is from Microsoft, Caruana Gaetamo. She is the Director of Customer Advocacy for Microsoft Teams. And she's an excellent speaker and has a lot of great information to share. So, Caruana, are you there?
I sure am. You can hear me, Russ?
Caruana?
I'm going to go ahead and take it away. That was a lovely introduction. Thank you so much. Okay. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Caruana, and
I saw her there a minute ago, so I know she's out there. There you are. I can see you, but I can't hear you. So let me just. Carol.
Really important health and wellness, and we'll look into better together areas. Microsoft Teams and SharePoint and our apps and it's really for that product. But again, like we stay focused on the adoption journey, and what balancing this kind of productivity space we have in now is with so I have a few slides and then I'm going to do a bit of a demo, and we'll kind of go from there. Just happy.
All right. So that's how you find me. If you're interested in this topic, it's always a good idea to connect on LinkedIn. You can follow me on Twitter, but that's about 75% work and 25% other stuff. So if you want to just get the work stuff, then definitely find my content on LinkedIn. And I really like to start off by talking about this idea of collaboration. So, in the collaboration, really stage for a large part of my career, collaboration and applications. And the thing about it is that it's really about what the people do with those tools. It's not actually about the tools themselves. And I know that a lot of folks who get very excited about new features or the next bright shiny object. What actually makes me excited is working with the people to get them to use what's available to them further for what they're trying to do. And this quote is from Satya's book, How to Get Refreshed, because he knows for sure that inside Microsoft, in our own culture, we have to work with each other across divisions and build ideas that hopefully help people get where they're going. And so I feel like we're in this space of adoption. It's important to innovative to approach these projects. And it's important to realize that that's a part of what we're doing in modeling that behavior, right? We're modeling the behavior on how to how to use these tools. So I do encourage people to embrace that in their own work. People aspire to teamwork naturally because they want human connection and they want to grow. Now, not everybody does. I agree with that. But at some level, people need to get to one another to really have their environment working and right. Keeping voting isolation down. That's actually some material that we created around adoption during this time. Because that first kind of this huge goal. This delivers a shared impact. Shared impact is actually the best impact for any organization. This is just about more fuzzy stuff either in terms of an adoption perspective. Great adoption yields great business results. It's just that simple. Companies have made investment in Microsoft software. We want them to get the most out of it. We ultimately thrive in our own right. We should see into the background and their goal of trying to accomplish. Take confidence in their view when their teamwork is going well. But based on the current situation, all changes we are evolving our adoption method. And so some of you may be familiar with the adoption framework that developed others 2 years ago and launched it to better reflect practical knowledge about for service adoption with customers. And the adoption framework as today is an important part of the conversation here at the bottom of the slide. Business outcomes that is for us. It is not a change management framework. It is not an organizational development framework. It is about the adoption of Microsoft 365. And the service adoption specialist course that goes alongside that is designed to complement the education you may have in either of those other fields, change management theory like ProSci, or organizational development and other things, which of course is a whole body of study. Now we're adding to this, however, MOCA, which is the Modern Collaboration Architecture. I'm going to talk just a little bit about that this morning because MOCA is important to answer the what tool collaboration. Now, if you don't get that's why I picked a conversation. I really like to stay on business outcomes. I really like people to tell me what they're trying to achieve, and then I build something for them and give them the right application, usually Teams and something else. But people ask the question. And so it's really important to understand the different types of collaboration that exist and what's appropriate for those scenarios. That's what MOCA does. But most importantly, we're really focused on what we call a human-first approach. Actually, human-first. This really goes on the theme this idea has been sharing over the last since Ignite, but before, really since the beginning of the pandemic. Really paying attention to and embracing employee health and wellness. And so, I'm happy that I work in an organization where that is so much part of the conversation, but that may not be true where you are, right? You may be the one who brings the ideas of employee wellness to the table and balancing that with productivity and maybe other stressors depending upon your industry. One of the important things about right now is that the pandemic has affected every business, every person, every region differently. It's the only thing in our lifetimes that has affected us all on the planet and necessarily, made us very close together in that regard. It's not different. Even if it's different for every person because it's just you have to not. So being able to take this flexible yet consistently compassionate approach to help people work from home and having some return into the workplace allows us to be flexible with a situation that continues to evolve. We are putting a lot of tools and conversation about all of these things, and not all at adoption of Microsoft. That is the site I manage. I think of myself like the steward of this site. Many people contribute to it, but I make sure it stays, involved. Microsoft.com realized it did not exist. I'll call it 18 months ago. A year ago, sure it did not exist because it's publicly launched. And I think the fact that we have launched it now, that we've gotten this out to the world now, and all of the different services are coming to it to bring together their ideas and content about adoption in one place is really a big step forward for all of us. I remember when I became a customer and having, all of the different stuff and everywhere. So we're project society and when you do that information is for humans first, so this handout keeping and isolation down. Sometimes people don't know that they are, feeling isolated. They're just working remote and really don't know, what's happening to them. Depression can sneak up on people. And so even if you do something like schedule a happy hour for your team where you play buzzword bingo, we're doing a corporate buzzword bingo in my team. How many times do I say I'm so excited about it? What we have to do is make a stated effort, right, and an actual effort to bring people into things that are a little more related to try to build those bonds and change what the experience of the workplace is like. Because when we talk to managers around the world, we know that the workplace is going through different post-pandemic, and post-pandemic will occur in different places at different times. I think post-pandemic, as a term specifically, decides until a vaccine is in broad distribution. But certainly, there in the U.S. and around the world, there are different stages, right? So researching the stage 5 and 6 and returning to the workplace is an option as we progress here in the United States. Certainly really important. So, I'm going to share this slide share and the slide used with my own team come from the top buildings because it brings adoption. The rest of someone speaking inadvertently. Okay. Yes. So this is an example of the slide I'm using with my own team. Again, these slides will be available for you. But my point here is you can't drive service adoption if your team is burnt out. If you want to have a healthy program in your organization that live from for a while and representing in our stuff, then you have and healthy don't happen by magic as economic. So on culture that you bring to the first thing you're participating in. And I phrased it that way on purpose because you cannot be a people enter, you may not be the leader of the adoption, challenge in your organization, but we are all members. We need to the best energy of that team, the morale of that team, and the direction of that team. If we look behavior of being open and welcoming and raising diversity of thought and style and having that cause for action, that can affect teams working. And the way we have the shift of the team, that's when you get introduced to actual the way they work, like Microsoft teams, like Flow, like other things that you can do that will continue to expand the footprint of Microsoft services in your organization. Nothing is more important right now than your team practices with regard to meetings. And we're having business meetings in the technology side of the house. the broadcast live it's fantastic to drive by training, there's like a community, to include people in a conversation you're having. It's a wonderful tool that's available to the folks in Microsoft Teams. But even other things from a more teamwork perspective inside the organization, this is where I feel like Microsoft, the culture of our company is lived out in the meetings that we have. All of us are in meetings on a regular basis, right? There's some events we go to, and certainly in the past we all flew around places, but really, we live our culture in the meetings we have every day. And now more than ever, we're in meetings constantly. And that was really having a drain and a toll on our employees. And they weren't able to learn things new because they're too tired, right? And that's a thing now. Like that virtual event and meeting fatigue is an actual state that your brain can get in. And your brain has to be well rested to learn. You can't drive adoption of something, or better adoption of something that exists if people's brain are tired. So at Microsoft, it was in Teams Engineering, and actually pretty broadly across the engineering groups, we've embraced some of these practices. No meeting Fridays, breaks in between the meetings where we start meetings later. We don't try to end them early because that never works. Using channel meetings in Microsoft Teams, which are great for stand-ups and broad product meetings, and also encourage cross-pollination. People come and do on a particular project. Stated staff meetings with staff and with suppliers, so that we all stay together on the same page. And probably my favorite is the bottom one, the OOF buddy, right? And the OOF buddy, out of office buddy, is somebody who actually takes your inbox and your chat and shows up in all your project meetings on your behalf while you were gone on vacation. And that's really important because for me as a manager, it means that my team will be a little bit more connected because they'll work with each other, cover each other when they're out. So I get that beautiful cross-training and connection element. But for the person who's on vacation, it means that they can actually unplug, stop looking at email and all these other things during the time of your vacation because you know that there's someone else to take care of it. I always joke that people at Microsoft are a little bit control freaks that way, like they have problems unplugging. I don't actually have to be one of those people. I deserve my vacation. I'm happy to take it. So that's the behavior I choose to model. But my team did not feel that way, right? My team was having difficulty unplugging and really letting themselves rest. Right? And 3 days, by the way, is not a vacation, even though many Americans think it is. That's just a cute long weekend. A vacation involves weeks, like 2 at least. And so it's definitely one of those things. Lastly, we have some apps that can be used inside of the Microsoft Teams environment that's like a plug-in to the team. And that app can allow you to poll your team and figure out really what's kind of going on with them, what they're thinking about. And again, it's very important to alter these things based on the culture of your organization. Putting an app into a channel of Teams in some companies would not work well, right? People would think that was very strange. But in other companies, certainly in the US, this is a normal thing to do to kind of ask, take the temperature of the team and how they're feeling. So I spent a lot of time this morning talking about, these items because, again, our teams and our employees are in a very different place now than they've ever been. And we really do have to be mindful of whether or not they're able to form in their minds the right intentions and behaviors so that we can marry that together with the right tools and create healthy teamwork in our organizations. And so the health and wellness of your employees is the cornerstone of any adoption plan or program that you may have as time goes forward. Now, I do want to have a chance to show you also adoption.microsoft.com and walk through a little bit of this for you so that you know about the resources that are available there. So let me bring this over onto the screen here. So we're actually in the middle of doing a redesign, but it'll have a similar metaphor as we've launched some additional content here. But adoption.microsoft.com is designed to bring together adoption assets for a variety of scenarios and products into one experience. And we've also used it as a hub to publish tools and other training and communities that are focused on adoption that will help you in your journey. As you look here, you can see this carousel. I will tell you, read the carousel and when you get to this website, because we actually program it very much like a news header in terms of what's really happening on this site right now. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. Learning pathways and the implement playbook and everything. But I'm going to start here with the virtual hub because some of you may have gone to Ignite. But there was a lot of content that wasn't actually at Ignite this year for a variety of reasons. It was a virtual event and many other things. And so definitely watch that Ignite content if you're interested in, kind of the executive positioning and what's next in all of our products. And if you need to go deep, with both IT and adoption, then you come to the virtual hub. And we have integrated in content together. Topic that you will want to know about security, compliance, and identity, all the things around collaborative work management and work. There's content from Ignite, from Microsoft, and content direct from engineering that tells you about important things. Because one of the things that's important about adoption is technical acumen. You have to have the right level of technical acumen to design the right sort of solution or experience that somebody wants to adopt. And I think about that when I see Microsoft Lists, right? Microsoft Lists is new now. There's a lot going on in that space, and you should learn about it because lists are a fundamental element of collaborating, and how you choose and what scenarios you choose to use them in is important. So this gives you the List Resource Center, the List Lookbook, the Ignite blog in terms of our announcements. So every one of these sessions has additional information about the particular item. And so we do have a section on adoption and change management as well. There's our section here on MOCA. This is the deep dive in it, as well as managing change with how to manage your Open Champions program. So there's a lot of information that is available to you, and we keep building on it. So there'll be lots more of it as continuing to come. So that's adoption.microsoft.com virtual-hub. It's right up here at the top. And we're pretty happy about the content that's out there from services across the Microsoft ecosystem. The same is true with the adoption information that you can navigate to by product right now. And then what's coming next is a business decision, an end user journey here that will be about scenarios. So you'll see a bit of select whether you want to pick adoption information by product or by the scenario that you happen to be working on. And so, starting that scenario library we feel like is really important. And so we're happy to get that going on. And so when I click into one of those products, our information is right up here. And then again, information by each of the different phases that you might find yourself in when you're driving adoption. Adoption is a very important thing. So are all the resources that are available for you in that area. You can take a look at this information here as you go through. We definitely have new information on enabling remote work and our Microsoft Productivity Score. Both of those topics are reasonably new. Productivity Score has been out for a little bit. But it's a great way to really understand the behavior and use data in your adoption strategy. And that's really an important component, and it's reasonably new, either using Microsoft Insights or the Productivity Score or the analytics that are inside Microsoft Teams. In any of those scenarios, it's quite useful to be able to understand people's behavior with the actual data and usage numbers from their own experience. These are things that a company would be opting into and deploying from an IT perspective, and then you can use that, and there's a guided trigger that's for you in terms of understanding what that productivity score will do. But I will say that it's measuring people's behavior in predefined scenarios that we've identified from our research are important to building healthy teamwork. So how are they communicating? How are they collaborating on content? Are they using mobile? What are their meeting behaviors, right? How many online meetings are happening and things of that nature? And then what kind of teamwork spaces are being provisioned across the ecosystem, either in SharePoint or in Teams. So these are, you can't edit these scenarios as yet, but it is a very good way to understand the behavior inside your tenant. And so you would deploy that, but over on the virtual hub, there's an entire section on it. And you can also find information at Ignite. And so I encourage you to bring data into the conversation about how you are driving adoption. That will be quite useful. So the last thing I just want to talk about here briefly is, of course, you can here learn more. There is our hub on the modern collaboration architecture that is available. As I said, there's a video on it, and I'm going to go through it a little bit today briefly, but this is where you should come to do a deeper dive on understanding, you know, the way that we think about mapping the different applications to different collaboration scenarios. And this is amazing work done by my colleague Rishi and his folks. He's in Australia. And I was so happy when I saw this, you know, come to the fore, because it really does do more to talk about the what tool went conversation than certainly I do. And so that's really useful stuff. Last thing is when you're thinking about driving adoption, make sure you think about investing in your own skills and the skills of the champions in your organizations. I run the Microsoft 365 Worldwide Champions program. We have expanded that this year to include some new tracks within it, because the nature and the work of a champion is quite different. We have product group presenters coming on a monthly basis. We're always talking about adoption there, and we tend to have a lot of fun. I'm going to blow this up a little bit for you here so you can see that these are the areas that we are really focusing on from a technical acumen perspective. I really want people to have those basics of security fundamentals, and then there are areas that you can focus on and really deepen your skills. M365 apps, cloud productivity, business process improvement, and then you learn adoption strategy and how to execute adoption programs on top of that. Now, some folks, like myself and others, we know all three, but you might choose to really focus on other things, right? And so, you know, one area only. So I think it's important to have a community of people like we found today with everyone that's here, because champions by nature and people driving adoption often care a lot about people. We need to find our own group, because sometimes in an organization, we're the only person doing that. I'm very lucky that we have a group of people who do adoption inside Microsoft, and so I'm not alone for once. And it's fantastic, but you might be. And so being able to come to these communities like the one we're in today, the one that we have for Microsoft, all of those things are really important, because, you know, you too need to have a professional development plan, and also have that place where you get inspiration, right? Where you feel part of something bigger than yourself, where you know why this adoption work brings meaning into your career. I'm super clear about it. My adoption work that I do is the best thing that I do. It is fantastic. I actually like also building all these tools, because I love to build things, especially with Microsoft technology. It's so much fun for me. But the most meaningful stuff I do is help other people. And so, you know, hopefully you will find that too in the M365 Worldwide Champions program. You can sign up for it, it's free, and have that augment this community that you found here. Plus you get access to all of the slideware, which you can use in your own champion program as well. So I've scratched the surface of what is available at adoption.microsoft.com. And I really want you to explore the site. And get ready, because before Thanksgiving we'll be landing some additional content showing you and highlighting you more of the real world stories that are from partners. That's a key part of this virtual hub, of the real world scenarios and tips and things that are coming from actual folks outside in the world besides Microsoft, which I always think is really important. And so, but they have applications and solutions as well that we'll be highlighting. So yeah, more coming, especially over these next 2 months. and it should be really fun. So join us out there, check it out, and then make sure that you are using M365 Learning Pathways, Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways to actually help people train in your organization. And, you know, lots of folks think about training now, but they don't often realize that we have an entire training solution that is available for them, and that it's great. And other partners can then customize it for you and really get your own stuff in it, which is wonderful. But Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways will allow you to have your own training portal that streams our content, so that you can spend your time working with people instead of making slideware. Because if you do any sort of training whatsoever, and I know Heather knows this well, why you know that is an important thing to reduce the time that you spend on slides. All right, so I do want to pause, and I wonder if anybody has questions at this point. I wanted to have an opportunity to make sure I them.
So I haven't seen any questions come in yet, but please, if you have questions for Caruana, please put them into the chat. Somebody mentioned about learning pathways.
Anything that you want to know, I can also do a overview of the mock coverage architecture I have content. I just wanted to pause so I've been talking and make sure that people have it. I believe I have about 10 more minutes. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. And Caruana's going to hang with us for about 10 more minutes, and then she has to run. So we're going to, after that, we'll take a couple-minute break to just get Heather set up, and then Heather will get started. But if you have some questions, please go ahead. I can see one that was submitted. What training and features do you have on adoption.microsoft that I can take and share as a champion?
Absolutely.
Sorry, I just wanted to say I was specific to the next question.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Okay, so let's go over here under topics. There's a couple of things. You should be thinking about the remote work setup that you have. Our human first page. There's a couple of things. If you go to our under resources, guides, and this is where we have hosted all of the books and content we have around the various pieces of software that exists, right? And so the Teams adoption guide is really helpful to understand different scenarios that are available from a product perspective. But hang on one second and let me navigate over to here we go. So I'm going to put this URL in the chat so that folks can get to it. This is the Human Remote Work. This page gives you the link to this particular handout that is how keeping morale up and isolation down. And actually, I feel like this is going to an older version of the page. I'm about to publish information here that is directly from the slide deck that I was showing earlier. So the link to the application, the link to the slide where it is about the different wellness behaviors that you can control. And yeah, so here you go. Here is a benefit itself, right? It's built in. And so I would also say that in Microsoft Teams itself, you should be looking at things like kudos and praise, and really building in some of the around about work. We've seen that very successful. And the last thing that you'll find in the slide deck is the information about how to set up. I'm going to have to schedule meetings 5 minutes shorter from the beginning of the half hour or 10 minutes shorter from the beginning of the hour, making an hour-long meeting. So those are the kinds of things that you'll find on this page. Friday-ish or so, that new content will be included on that page. But most of what I'm talking about is actually in the slide where it's trying to be today, and we'll get to that as we talk.
Carolina, one of the other questions is.
Is there anything in adoption for AIP? Can you tell me what AIP is?
Yeah, another question that's out there too is Reflect app available in GCC?
I think AIP is probably referring to Azure Information Protection.
Perfect. Okay, got what it is. I'll let you guys go back on muted. Okay. So for Azure Information Protection, there isn't yet. We're actually working on the various security workloads to get together the adoption information and really kind of bring it into the family. A lot of the adoption content you'll find from some of the other engineering groups is less visual and more like, a little bit, I call them a global text page. And that's for something that needs to snap to the framework. A lot of the security will come next quarter after the US holidays. And so you'll be able to see that then. And then there was another question here. Oh, the Reflect app available in GCC. I would have to double check. I believe so. In GCC, I believe it will work. Not in GCC High or DoD, obviously, but I do believe it will work in GCC. And if it doesn't today, it's on its way. Obviously, if you work in GCC, you hear us say that an awful lot. I apologize. But it is definitely something that we're working on, is bringing that parity of applications and tools, especially in the adoption space, to you. Government is one of the areas that I work in primarily. It's one of the verticals that I support, and so I'm with folks like that every day. And we have some other things like an FAQ bot. We have this different and newer version of the Champions Badge and the Teamwork Champions program automation tools that we're working on. The original one came out. We had some issues with that Champions Badge. I actually pulled it because they didn't like the way that it was operating. Much to the chagrin of some folks, but it was the right thing to do. And now we'll be relaunching that kit. And as we're building it, we're trying to build that as well for GCC, so that people will have that same advantage. Because obviously, in government, you need to drive change and adoption just as much as you do anywhere else. So bringing that understanding to all of my friends in engineering who may or may not have ever worked in that space, you'll see us accelerate that shortly. Well, the last thing I want to share with you here is, really take the time to go through the content that's available. Go to adoption.microsoft.com, but make sure you understand kind of the strategic positioning that we're doing as a company by reviewing some of the keynotes at Ignite. Then you can come over to adoption.microsoft.com, check out all the resources, continue your learning path in the virtual hub, and get inspired by some of the real world stories and scenarios that we're highlighting. And then if you want to take it the next step, then you go to Microsoft Learn. And Microsoft Learn is where you do micro learning, often on technical topics, but we're going to be publishing more adoption training there. My service adoption specialist course is going to be moving to Microsoft Learn in January, and we'll be adding content there as well around these different topics. And so that will allow you to earn badges and get your certificate of that as you can today. So it's really a learning journey that you have, and it's really important as direct adoption that you kind of stay up to par on the things that are coming from Microsoft in your area of expertise. As I mentioned, we can broke our champion program into 3 different tracks there because there's a lot to learn, and nobody has to try to be good at everything. But if you are, then you'll want to use some of the resources that we have to make sure to stay up on everything that's happening
And I really want to thank everyone for inviting me here today. I will put a link out. I'm sure the conference organizers will share my slides. As I'll make sure that y'all have a link to this as well. And I just really love being here with you. Look at all the great people you have together talking about adoption. You know, this is a valid career path. Being an adoption specialist and the certificate that Microsoft has for that, as well as the other types of organizational development and change education that you can do, really is, I believe, a great way to secure a professional direction. For me, it has always put together two things I like the most: technology and people. So I encourage you to, embrace this area that you found yourself in, because we're fun too. We can be a lot of fun. I think that I always cover content if you like more. What are you going to leave for us?
Thank you, Caruana.
I love all of the adoption content that you put out, creating it. It's awesome. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Sometimes I have to say with the content, make it feels a little bit like I'm screaming into the void. So I really enjoy making these sorts of events and getting feedback. And if you think it's something, I'll keep an eye on this chat. If you think it's something that you need, if you don't see that you want, please give me that feedback. Use the widget on the website, and we have an adoption feedback user voice specifically for content around learning pathways and adoption site. So keep it all coming, because I need your feedback to feel like I'm not.
For somebody else, yes, always to know as a presenter.
That's me, right? Have a good day. Have a good day. Absolutely.
Quick question. So we've talked through the sub teams and where teams calling. What's the push to revisit the again on adopting and to use all the favorable clients, the web client, as a client, mobile client for teams calling?
Yeah, the target question is, users don't care about coming features. They care.
Hey, Peter, sorry to jump in, but I lost your screen share. I'm not sure if it's just me or if it's everyone. Okay. All right. Sorry. Sure. We have a few minutes to maybe 10 minutes that we can spend with questions, but we're going to also do a panel Q&A after my session. I'm only going to spend about 15 minutes talking, so that'll give us about 15 minutes for Q&A, and we can touch on anything at that point also. So was there some things coming into I just saw a couple messages bounce up there. Yeah. Yeah, that's a nightmare. I'm so tired of. I was really hoping that companies have gotten to the point where that's not an issue anymore, but I still go into companies and still see that same exact scenario. All right, excellent. Thank you so much, Peter. I appreciate it. Fantastic job. Thank you for joining us today. Okay, so folks, I'm just going to take a couple minutes to get set up here. So maybe 3 minutes and then we'll get started. And I'll spend about 15 or 20 minutes talking, and then we will jump into the panel Q&A and wrap up before 2 o'clock. So thank you all. Okay, folks, thank you so much for joining us. Let's get started again. So my name's Russ Pazura. Hope that you all know me by now, but if any of you are new, I wanted to just kind of give you a background. I've been involved with this community and SharePoint community for as long as I can pretty much remember. I kind of got started with document management and intranet type applications back in around 95. So my actual first experience was with an Apache web server. So if you maybe there may even be someone on the call that don't know what that is. So anyway, my experience really ranges from mid-sized companies to enterprise companies. If I gave you a list of the clients I've worked with, you'd probably know every single one of them. I spent 10 years growing a Microsoft Gold partner and sold that in 2016 and took a little bit of time off while my kids were still young enough that I could actually spend some time with them, and they wanted to spend time with me, which was, I guess, was more importantly. And, we did some family things for about a year, but, then I started getting back into things. And, I had run the Philadelphia SharePoint user group for about 8 years and started that out. And it was actually a hotel conference room. Eventually moved it over to Microsoft Office and grew that group. And we had, a lot of different presenters come out over the years. And, we had as many as 250 people in a meeting. So I've got a lot of experience running, events and, with the different types of Microsoft technology, but specifically, SharePoint document management, collaboration type solutions. And what really kind of brought me out of, depending on who you talk to, my wife would tell you I was unemployed. I would tell you I was semi-retired. But in any case, kind of got me more so involved back in to the technology environment. And that was really when I saw Teams and I saw the next level. It really takes you to that next level of collaboration with everything from the video conferencing and the chat and the different applications and all, and being able to work as a team in real time, as opposed to, putting a document in a library somewhere or on a file share and having to share it, using the example that Peter gave is a great example. You have a project manager, poor project manager sends a document out through email, and you got all these different versions of the document, and they all come back to him, and then he's got to collate everything. Well, SharePoint changed a lot of that, but the culture around it took a while for people to adopt it. And honestly, it took a lot longer with that stage of maturity than what has happened with Teams, because one, everybody was pretty much forced into it overnight, but they really had to start picking up for the, video conferencing and chat capabilities and all with it. Anyway, I'll come back to more of that later, but, I've done different types of SharePoint Saturdays and spoke at the SharePoint conference, wrote a bunch of, security and .NET development books. And like I mentioned, I've really kind of been working from home the past 5 years and, growing my company. So, I wanted to kind of just touch on something, and really I kind of shrunk this down from 5 to really kind of 3 key steps that I'm going to kind of take you through as we go through this. But, everything that Caruana has said, everything that Heather and Peter have both added in, excellent points throughout of it. My own experience is it's really come down to 3 key things that have drove user adoption in some of the biggest companies that I've worked with. And I'm going to talk to you about what the use the secret weapon and what that is. I'm going to come back to that. But then, to really make Teams real for your end users, they see the video conferencing and chat really got to get them involved in some of the other applications, using Planner and To Do and using the different bots and all, and seeing so that they can see how that makes them more effective. Using forms and Power Automate attached to those forms, or even more, building custom Power applications, which can all be done out of the browser, and build them and incorporate those custom applications into Teams. So if you've got things like, request-driven processes, things that you might be using applications like Service Desk or, those type of things. One, you can tap into Service Desk from Power Apps, but you can build your own version of it, for request tracking and all through Power Apps, and using the workflows and everything to automate, using the Power Automate workflow capabilities to automate the business process behind that. So whether you're doing something, like just processing a approval on a request, or if you've got to actually, Peter had mentioned his tool about provisioning. If you have to go out and provision Teams, you can create an app template and execute it from inside of the workflow to basically go out and provision Teams. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use that Power Apps technology. So, but build those showcases, and then, start with 3 and, grow those and grow. Well, I'm going to go into more in detail, but, take advantage of that, make Teams real for your end users so that they can see the full breadth of the capabilities that Teams brings to the platform. And then, one of the most important things is, to provide weekly type of trainings, and whether it is something as simple as a, like a webinar, like what we're doing, or just a recording, or an email that goes out, or messages through Teams, keep them in the loop and keep them engaged. And that is really what's important with it. So, trainings don't need to be big, long, formal trainings. It could be a 5-minute recorded tip that is just shared as a video and a demo, with it that, tells somebody, hey, here's how to use the Who bot or the Secretary bot, or here's this form that's now available for you, or here's Planner. You have all these different capabilities. So, that is, those are 3 key things. And I'm going to come back. Somebody's asking about, Rachel, you're asking about the secret weapon. I'm going to get to that, I think, next. A couple slides here anyway. So, the old way of driving user adoption is people schedule in-person trainings, they build intranet content, and then they hope that the users start adopting it. And, we've evolved a long way from this, but, when early years of SharePoint and all, this is the way a lot of training was done. And obviously COVID has changed this so much in the last 6 months that, we really need to kind of get away from, that cross your fingers approach to driving user adoption to, the new ways of doing it. So here's some of the things that to me, is really what's important with it. And first of all, the most important thing with this is around building that connection directly with your users. A lot of times before it was things that would go out through email and all, and it really doesn't build that connection. But doing the type of meetings like that we're doing today, it helps build that relationship, and, they get to know you and you get to know them, and you're having a regular conversation with them. So, I am a big proponent of having internal user groups inside of your corporate organizations. And, they always start out small, a few people, but, as more and more people get, are using the technology, or, need to learn more about it and all, you have other things that you can be training them on and using that. And it builds that connection. And that's really what's important. So, as part of that, when you're doing those sessions, use those sessions to build enthusiasm around the technology. Everybody's looking for with them, what's in it for me? And, you want to demonstrate the capabilities for them with, for the different things that you can do inside of Teams. Like, I was mentioning about, the different bots and the apps, of course. Yeah, that's all out of the box and easy to do. But, also how can you extend it to align with their business processes? When I think about creating teams, I think about teams as to what's my business process. And I start with that. So, if you have a customer onboarding process, my recommendation is to create a team for customer onboarding and have everything that's involved in customer onboarding as part of that. So if you have to provision accounts, or, you're provisioning something in your accounting system, whatever part of your onboarding process, you can make it as part of your team. And then your users, regardless of what department they're with, if they're part of, your HR group, if they're part of finance, if they're part of manufacturing, whoever needs to be part of that customer onboarding process, have them part of that team. And then that's where all of your information is, everything's shared, and everything's around that business process. And that's usually where I recommend companies start, is to pick really 3 business processes. I've seen a lot of companies go down the path of, well, my HR needs a team. Okay, I'm sure they do, but that affects just the HR. You want to kind of focus on stuff that has a broader implications and return on investment across your company. And that's where the tying it into business processes and using that business process to design what your team actually looks like. So anyway, I'm getting way off. But once you build those, use those to build enthusiasm with other users. Take them to the other groups. Take that to HR and say, look at what finance did. Look what customer onboarding did, with these different groups. And it helps people visualize in it. And they start getting what's in it for me then. They see the benefits, and it helps them communicate back to you what they could leverage from inside of their organization. So very important part of the process. I already mentioned the weekly pre-recorded trainings. The other thing is have an office hours call on Teams where anybody can jump in. It could be, a half hour at the end of the week, or, whenever. But, I've usually found that like Wednesday afternoons work well for it. But, figure out what time is going to work well inside of your company. We've done them kind of as like, we used to do them as brown bag lunches, but, people bring their lunch and you just have different questions and answers. And that's the purpose. If somebody needs help, you have the opportunity to get in front of it and help them before they become frustrated. So it's a really important part of the onboarding, or the new way of driving user adoption. I mentioned those 3 sites to start with. Well, that's the start of your champions. You need a champions program, and they're going to be the champion for teams within their specific business areas or for their specific business process. And these can be both, your stakeholders, your executives, but, more likely your champion is going to be somebody that's in the business that's responsible day to day for that process. And, maybe involved in actually building out that team. But start bringing them in, and as you go through the process of onboarding more areas to that, make sure you have a champion associated with each of them, because then they become mentors. As as you train them, then they go out to the business and they train the rest of the business on it. And, it gives you the capability to scale that user adoption throughout your organization quicker. And then always have a support team, just a team that's created specifically for, supporting teams within the organization. I've seen this done a couple different ways. I usually recommend it as a team, and, you have the chat in there. But another way I've seen it is with Yammer, and using Yammer conversations and all to provide support for it. And I think either works well, but, I always recommend, having a team there so that somebody has a place that they can go to quickly, ask questions again. So This is my version of everything that Caruana, Heather, and Peter have said to kind of summarize it and for driving user adoption within big companies. So the secret weapon is, people say, oh, it's a silver bullet. It's not. There's no such thing as a silver bullet. But it's that connecting with those users, whether you're connecting with your leadership team or your end users, being in front of them and staying communicative, continue to communicate with them about the capabilities of Teams and how it can help them with the business. Given that communication and that relationship that I talked about, to me, I've seen that be more successful at companies than anything else. Once you have that relationship, you can build on it and they start having faith in you and trusting you. And, it's that relationship across the organization that to me is what's most important. So culture's different at companies. You have to figure out exactly what the best way is to communicate for your users. Some companies have a lot of field workers and they only have a small number of corporate users. So maybe the way you're communicating with them is different, but building that relationship and staying in front of them and keeping those communication channels open. So when they do have an issue or when they think, oh, can I do this in Teams? You're available, you have somebody available to be able to respond to that. So, ties very nicely into the Champions program, and it can certainly, that when I say about building that relationship, it's more than just you individually. It's, that whole program that you have for supporting teams, including your champions. So let's see some questions. Okay. So I'm going to come back to some of the questions as I go through this. But I started to touch on the cultures. Every company is different. What you need to do is figure out, your company's best. How do your employees learn? How do the, different roles within your organization, how do they learn differently? I mentioned the field workers, and it's something that I run into all the time is, they have a different way of processing information and learning than a lot of your corporate information workers. And, that's something that's important to take into account as part of, your user adoption, because, if your approach focuses on one group, even if it's not intentionally focused on them, but it's focused from how they learn perspective, then that's the group that's going to adopt it, and you're going to leave this other group hanging out. So, make sure you understand how the different groups within your organization learn. I am very much a believer in getting people off of email. At the same time, you have a lot of dinosaurs within companies that are very difficult to move over time. They're used to working a single way. You need to be able to reach out to those people. So whatever your existing communications are, or however you provide training to them, whether you have an online training system, internally, something like Learning Paths that has been mentioned, Learning Pathways, whatever they're using, leverage those existing communication channels and learning opportunities as part of it. So around your champions program, you're going to need champions for each area of the business. I have already stated that initially I try and focus on 3 business processes and define who the champion is for each of those, build a team around that and around each of those, train those individuals that are going to be the champion for each of them, and then take that out as showcases for each area of the business. And try not to do 3 processes that are very similar. You want to try and have 3 that are demonstrate the various capabilities of it. So you may end up with 3 completely different processes, but identifying that is and building that stuff out is important, because it allows you to take those and promote that out to the rest of the company. Most people anyway, learn best by seeing. They want to be able to see things. They want to be able to, if you can walk them through how something works, then they can map that into their own process. So, it is marketing, but it's marketing internal to your company, and it's about how to, using that real life use cases, scenarios to promote it for the rest of the company. And then, of course, as you start building out beyond that, you make sure you're having a champion for each area. You make sure they're getting trained, and then they're coming into that whole process around support and, onboarding for it. So I think I am running out of time here. So I'm going to kind of really spin through some things real quick here. So, turn your executives into champions. They want to hear about business outcomes. They want to hear about visibility of information. How are you improving the speed of the organization, improving your decision-making, and then include the entire supply chain in there. Companies have changed significantly. You have to include your partners and customers, because a lot of times how they perceive you is the greatest return on investment that you will get from teams. So I already touched on that. And, so I've kind of covered this too, but, as part of your early adopter program, identify those 3 groups, build showcases, and then use them to, enable and show what can be done throughout the organization. So, with onboarding, this is all part of it. How are you going to onboard your users? How are teams going to be provisioned? How are champions going to receive training? You need to answer those questions so that information can be communicated out, because, how teams are provisioned are different from one organization to the next. Peter talked a lot about forms and Power Automate. I'm not going to really go into this anymore, but you do have polls and surveys, and, you can build forms and questionnaires and everything out there. Heather touched on she did a great job around the bots and apps and connectors, but this is part of the new way of driving adoption. It's, that automation and, giving people quick access to the information they need. I've got a story around kitchen management, but I'm going to kind of sketch and how it ties to change management, because change management is important. If anybody's ever read the book, what's it called? It's like, Where'd You Move My Cheese or something. It's, anyway, it's, I've gone back with my wife, and my wife is great at organizing our kitchen and all. And, I get used to things being done a certain way and in a certain place. And, I always look for knives in a certain location. Well, she moves it because she thinks it's more effective and efficient for her, which is great. But I'm a slow adopter when it comes to that stuff, and it takes me a long time. So, you have to make sure that you're communicating those type of changes. If you're moving, if you're changing the business process and things are being moved from one team to another, you need to be able to communicate that stuff out to the organization. Peter talked about analytics and reporting. Have a training plan, use multiple types of training, incorporate the learning pathways. It's an excellent tool. On-demand video-based training. Your daily tips and all out to the organizations, and create your user training based on the roles for the organization. So I am going to kind of leave it here at this point. The most important part is the value that you deliver out to those different business areas. So I'm going to spend a second looking through the questions, but I want to bring Peter and Heather back in because I've sucked up more time than I planned to. If you, Peter and Heather, are you out there? Okay, fantastic. All right, folks. So what questions do you have at this point? What's it? T is for teams, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. I got to turn my video on here for a second, see if this goes on. But yeah, there it goes. These are my team socks. So not exactly Sesame Street socks, but they're close. So so I'm catching up in here, Peter. Do you have, or Heather, was there other questions in there that we want to touch on, or? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That is great. So folks, if I also just gave everybody back the ability to unmute themselves. So if you want to kind of just unmute and ask your questions, that works well too. Yeah, I think bookings is one of the most underutilized applications that are out there at this point. But I hope to see more people using that for scheduling partner and client meetings. Yeah, I mean that's a great tool for anybody that has to do any type of scheduling. It's got a lot of fantastic capabilities from a mobile user perspective for as Peter said, for first line workers to be able to view their schedules, but also for managers to be able to assign tasks for what they're supposed to accomplish during a given shift. So it even goes beyond just the pure scheduling. It starts to tie into, what is that employee supposed to be working on during that period of time. Yeah, I mean, we all learn from each other. So, you know, certainly anybody that has, you know, thank you all for sharing your experiences and everything with us, because, you know, we all learn from each other. So I will go back through here and try and go through any other questions and provide any types of answers that, you know, if we've missed anything. But, you know, I think it is a lot of great feedback. Well, I need to go. So the recordings were actually done through the live version, and I need to pull them down from there and just make sure everything. It was the first time doing this go live on, you know, I'm actually using a product called StreamYard to basically, and OBS to basically stream all this out to, yeah, oh, no. Yeah, more than a couple. And it's actually, it's not difficult, but at the same time, it's complex because there are so many tools. So anyway, it's supposed to be going out to YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So each of them are supposed to be recording it. So I need to check that recording and verify it. I shut off the recording inside. Initially, I had started the recording inside of Teams, and I was going to do it there. But a lot of people were saying they were having issues around the audio, and I didn't know what it was. So, you know, I shut off the recording as just one way of kind of limiting, you know, performance on my system, because my system was pegged basically from a processor perspective. But it seems like, you know, Heather, as soon as you started talking, the audio was clear, and Peter, you're coming across fine and all too. So I think it may have been something to do with how Caruana was actually connected in. So not sure. Oh, good. So that recording anyway, that should be available really right away. You know, so I don't think there's anything I even need to do. You should be able to go just in on each of those platforms and be able to view that recording as soon as we wrap up, or shortly thereafterwards. We're going to post the presentations, the slides, and all that we had. I will post them out on or links to them out on my LinkedIn, but they will also go up onto the Teams Day Online site. Heather, you know, Peter, if you've got places you want to put them to start with and we can link to from there, that's great. But I think this will all happen within the next 24 hours. So it shouldn't take too long to get everything posted. Anybody have any other questions or comments that they want to jump in with? Please go ahead. Yeah, so yeah. Yeah, great points. Any other questions? Okay. So let's talk about future from here. So first I'll say, Peter, thank you very much for joining us. Heather, thank you very much for joining us. I definitely hope and want to have both of you back at some point in the future so that we continue this on a regular basis. Talking about this going forward, Teams Day Online is basically going to be a monthly event. And it will continue to be the second Thursday of every month, like today. So the next event is December 10th. And I forget the exact January date, but then I believe February 12th is another one. Anyway, it is that second Thursday. And next month, I'm going to have with me Michael Giannotti from Microsoft. And I'm also going to have Dwayne Hyatt and Joe Gasper from, and I know I saw at least Joe on here earlier. I'm not sure if Joe's still on here or Dwayne's here. But anyway, they are both from the University of Florida. And we're going to basically be covering, virtual events for corporate virtual events, and how to use the different types of technology, and just show you what we've done. Michael's going to take a lot about the vision and what's coming with things for SharePoint Spaces in particular. But any of the other technology components, Michael's going to basically be touching on. And then Dwayne, Joe, and myself, we're going to kind of it's going to be a single presentation, but we're going to each touch on, they have a conference that they've done for the University of Florida that initially was all internal. And this last one that they did, they just brought on like 1,400 external guest users as part of that. So they're going to talk about what they did. And I'm going to talk about Teams Day Online, but that's going to probably be maybe about 15 minutes between the University of Florida and Teams Day Online stuff. We're going to actually get into things like, what are we using for webcams? What are we using for, DLSRs, microphones and hardware, and the software that I mentioned, the OBS. We're going to talk about all of those different capabilities and integrating it with things like SharePoint Spaces. So that's going to be the December presentation. January, I'm still working on, but I believe it's going to be around automation. So maybe that'd be a good one to have Heather back again and kind of deep dive into the next level of automation with it. But then in February, we're going to do governance, and Susan Hanley is going to join us on that day. And, I've said in the past, Susan's like the queen of governance from SharePoint and, really everything. But, she's been around a lot. She's a great speaker and all. So she's going to be with us in February there. And we're going to keep these going. But the next Teams Day Online global event will be April 7th and 8th. And, just like our event in September, October, it will be, 100 speakers, whatever we end up with. And we will touch on everything related to Teams. And, so I'm excited about that event. And, that's kind of the looks of the calendar for the next few months. So if no one else has any questions or anything they'd like to jump in with, I will give you back the rest of the day, as I'm already chewed into 7 more minutes than I told you I was going to. So thank you all for joining us today. It was a great group. I appreciate it all. Thank you so much. And we look forward to sharing with you again in the future. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.